Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Friday, February 13th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. You know, there's no shortage of great articles I have for you today that we'll dive into. But I want to get right into work with our weekly economic report. But before I do that, I want to talk about an issue that has come to mind that some people have been asking me about. And they've asked why I haven't commented on this. And that would be the Nancy Guthrie abduction case that we hear nonstop, ad nauseum on the mainstream news. The reason why I'm not covering this is for one particular reason. We have no idea what is going on. The only thing we know for certain is that this woman has been taken. Other than that, we have no suspect, we have no leads, we really have nothing on this. And while it's very awful that this took place, I don't want to comment on this until I get some hard data that I can present to you in a news article coverage. That's what I want to do. I want to bring you facts. I don't want to bring you skepticism or speculation or what it could be or any type of different number of scenarios it could be. So that's why I've kind of been a little bit silent on this. Of course, it's absolutely horrible. We hope for her safe return, of course. But I'm not going to cover this until I get some actual hard data on this. So I just wanted to make that clear to everybody that's listening. And by the way, folks, this happens every day in America. People get lost, people get abducted. Imagine if we had that round the clock on the mainstream media. I think it'd be a bit different, don't you think so? I do too. All right, let's jump into the weekly economic report. Let's jump into the S&P 500 first. We got the S&P 500 trading at $6,853.17 a share. It's up 0.3% from yesterday's close. It's down over 1%, though, for the week on average. And a lot of this you're going to see, too, is because of the AI disruption fears that we're seeing throughout the market, especially in the tech sectors that are taking place. NASDAQ trading at $22,612.95 a share. It's up 0.07% from yesterday's close. Dow Jones International trading at $49,576.63 a share, up 0.25% from yesterday's close. Again, this one's down more than 1% from last week. A lot of the financials, the traditional sectors relating to the AI sectors have seen some disruptions, although we're seeing some of the CPI numbers that have kind of driven this up a little bit. That's why we're seeing a little bit of a rebound for all these stocks, but not too much. So that's why you're seeing that. Again, the NASDAQ, 2% weekly decline. We're seeing a lot of the software, real estate that's affected with the AI kind of at risk here. That's why we're seeing some of these numbers a little bit off today. That's why you're seeing that. But hey, look, the Dow Jones is down below 50,000. Maybe Pam Bondi can go and arrest somebody related to the Epstein case now. Wouldn't that be great? I think so. Let's jump into our tech stocks. We got NVIDIA trading at $184.81 a share, down 1.14% from yesterday's close. Meta trading at $650.68 a share. It is up 0.13% from yesterday's close. Apple trading at $260.05 a share, down 0.64% from yesterday's close. Amazon trading at $200.91 a share. It's up 0.66% from yesterday's close. Alphabet trading at $306.97 a share. It is down 0.66 cents, up 66%, from yesterday's close. Then we got Microsoft trading at $404.11 a share. It is up 0.56%. And then we got Dell Technologies, my wonderful Dell computer that was freezing on me this morning. I don't know why that is, too. The computer's basically brand new. You know, it might actually be the Windows, I think is what's going on. Windows 11, I can't stand it. Maybe you feel the same way. It doesn't run properly. I don't know what it is, but Dell is trading at $117.92 a share. It is up 4.52% from yesterday's close. Then we got Broadcom trading at $330.70 a share, down 0.14% from yesterday's close. And then we finally have Bitcoin here, trading at $69,109.28 a share, down slightly from last week and down quite a bit from 2 weeks ago from our show. It was $83,000 2 weeks ago. So you're seeing a lot of people selling off in the cryptocurrency. We're seeing a very volatile market for the tech sectors this week. Many of these stocks are set to close lower this week than how they performed last week, despite some rebounds we're seeing from today, some of the upward trends we're seeing. Many of the AI-linked stocks are performing a little bit better, it seems, although they've been quite the reason for some of this decline, usually in the manufacturing sectors, though. Let's jump into precious metals now. We've got gold trading at $5,050.70 an ounce. It is up 0.52% from yesterday's close. You're seeing a lot of momentum buying with the gold because, again, it's stabilizing above 5,000 now. So a lot of people are being bullish on it. They're investing more. That's why you're seeing that trend. Silver doing very well. Also, it's trading at $83.60 an ounce, up 3.6% from yesterday's close. Platinum trading at $2,145 an ounce. Palladium trading at $1,732 an ounce, up 2.42% from yesterday's close. So really the precious metals are performing a lot better today. Again, because it's the safe haven flows that we're seeing, the geopolitical uncertainty as it continues on, along with a softer dollar, and of course, that is boosting prices overall. We are also seeing the industrial demand for silver, palladium ores as well, so you're seeing some demand for that, so therefore the stock is continuing to go up. So the metals are doing great this week, as can expected, and again, you're seeing that gold stabilize really over the $5,000 mark. If that continues on, and that's what our estimates have been showing us, you're going to see gold hit $6,000 an ounce sometime in 2026. That's what the trends forecasters are telling us. So maybe it's a good time to be bullish on gold, folks. All right, let's look at our oil. Let's close things off. Let's look at Brent crude first, trading at $67.33 a barrel. It is down 2.75% from yesterday's close. The WTI crude trading at $62.67 a barrel, down 3.44% from yesterday's close. And I've added a new one this week. This is out of the UAE, in the Persian Gulf. This is the Murbain crude, and it's trading at $69.95 a barrel. And this one is up 1.23% from yesterday's close. Now, the downward pressure for demand in the forecast we're seeing is keeping the prices a little bit lower today. We're seeing the Murbain crude slightly above because of the regional demand in the Middle East. And, of course, the supply dynamics for that region, along with their contract structures. So because of, again, the oversupply in places like the United States, for example, WTI, we're overproducing. And as a result of that, you're seeing that stock continue to drop just a little bit. So we're seeing oversupply in some parts of the country right now. You're seeing some of the demand down in some parts. But if this war takes off, make no mistake about it, you're going to see the price of oil skyrocket. We're also going to talk about what's taking place in the oil industry inside California in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about inflation, because this is very important. As you can imagine, it affects each and every one of us. And the record-long shutdown that ran from October 1st to November 12th has a bit of an indicator on these inflation numbers that we're getting right now. Now, lots of people are very happy about this report. I tend to think that it's a little bit of a put-on. We're seeing some deceleration in the January numbers that are being put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Consumer Price Index, a key inflation gauge, is suggesting that the number right now is 2.4% for January. So it's up 2.4%, but it's down from the 2.7% numbers that we got in December. Lower than expected. People are happy about this. They're saying, look, inflation's going down a little bit. Now, inflation is still running above the target for most policymakers, particularly those at the Federal Reserve. And the reason, though, that we're seeing these These numbers that have been shifted, if you will. The reason why I don't believe this is the big caveat in the room. What is that? We had a government shutdown for 43 days, largely thanks to the Democrats. But the federal statisticians, from collecting the typical data that they would in the inflationary numbers in October, that didn't happen. And as a result of that, the Bureau of Labor Statistics assumed that no prices increased at all. Can you imagine that? Nothing changed from October 1st to November 12th. Everything was just exactly the same. Now, obviously, I don't believe that. I'm sure most of you don't either. But that's why we're getting these numbers. Now, the estimates for the CPI inflation rate would be around 2.7% if the data were included, is what they're saying. So really, they're suggesting there's really no change at all. There's no decline as well. That's what we're seeing right now. If we go and look at individual prices, though, for example, if we look at for example, food inflation, we've got groceries, dining out, that was 2.9% on an annual basis in January. So that's well above the 2% margin by the Fed. Again, historical higher standards right now. We're seeing categories like electricity, apparel, childcare, medical care, home heating, all those are up right now. Not too long ago, I told you, right before the new year, actually, I said heating prices, utility prices, all across America, they're going to increase by roughly 9.2%. Then that number was adjusted to 10.2%. Well, now here in this article, it's saying that the CPI data is telling us it's going to increase by 10%, as they were up already. So we already hit that. Look at this. Prices for utility gas service were up 10% annually in January. So there you go. See, that's why you listen to my show. You would have known in the end of December that these prices were going to rise. Now we're just finding out in mid-February. Outside of gasoline, inflation for most necessities were up well above their target, and in most cases above 3% is what they're telling us. Let's take another example. Let's look at something like beef, coffee prices, up 15%, 18% on the annual basis in January, respectively. A lot of this has to do with supply constraints. So what do we know that's happening in America? We know our herd sizes are decreasing. We've had droughts. We've had less livestock coming into the country from Mexico, for example. And now we want to import some cheaper beef from Argentina, $800 million worth. Now, while some people say, well, that's great, we're going to have a flood of beef, cheap beef from the, foreign country, that'll be good. But what does that do to our herd size, though, in America? What's the culprit of the problem? Is our herd sizes are lower. That's why you're seeing a lot of these beef packers also going under. That's not good either. So we've got to understand the cause and effect of these prices is really supply and demand, number one, but we're not doing anything to address that problem. We should be investing, of course, in cheaper production, incentives for people to get into the markets themselves, and that way we have greater supply. Greater supply with the same demand, obviously, is going to drop those prices. We're not seeing that. That's not what's taking place in D.C. No one's talking about this. Now, homeowners and renters insurance prices were also up 7%, same time frame. We're seeing largely due to insurers accounting for the financial risk posed by climate change, is what they're saying. I don't know what the hell that means, unless they're talking about natural disasters. I don't see that. Or if they're talking about the fires in California bringing up prices, which obviously is taking place. We're also saying electricity prices are up 6% annually on the back of higher demand tied to the development of data centers, again, to fuel the growth for the AI that we're talking about here. Again, the AI boom. That's going to crash sometime in 2026. So, again, people are going to be looking at this going, look, everything's good. We're down by, 0.3%. Well, I don't really think that's true. Most of you probably don't either. All right, let's move on to another article. Wall Street Journal says healthcare jobs have become the engine of America's labor market. Why is this? Well, we have nearly 130,000 new jobs added in the month of January. Most of them, nearly all of them, were healthcare-related jobs or new positions related to healthcare. We saw construction, manufacturing sectors also taking on some new workers, while employer cuts took place in the government, finance, information and transportation, and warehousing. Yeah. Now, does this sound healthy to you, though? Does this sound like we have a booming economy if, for example, we have health and social assistance jobs, for the most part, growing by, 12.5% in the last 3 years, whereas growth in every other sector of the economy is less than 2%? And by the way, a lot of these healthcare jobs are not always high-paying jobs. Evenly, if you spread this out, let's say we did get 130,000 jobs. If we spread that out evenly, that's 2,600 jobs per state. Does that sound good to you? A state like California, where there's roughly 39 million people, you added just 2,600 new jobs? That's your job creation? Again, if it's evenly spread out. So we got to look at that. And we've got to take that into consideration. Does this sound like a strong performing market? It sounds hollowed out to me. Maybe it does to you too. And by the way, I told you earlier this week too that Taiwan was supposed to be investing in microchips processing in the United States. They were going to put it out in the desert in Arizona. Some 40% of the market operation was going to total some $250 billion they were going to outsource to the United States. Well, that's been canceled, folks. And guess what? Nobody's talking about this. Not a single person's talking about this. This company, this TSMC, would instead rather invest in nearby China or nearby Japan, not in Arizona. So again, this is proposed. Why would you put a microprocessing chip factory and its production in the middle of the desert when copious amounts of water is needed for, again, these processes? Where's also the labor for this? Are there a lot of, tech-savvy people in the middle of the desert? And what's the lure to bring it to the middle of the desert? Again, I blame D.C. for this. That's simply not good. Who knows? Maybe that's part of the art of the deal. I don't know. Who knows? All I know is that's a bad strategy. So it looks like that's off the table now. We haven't been told a thing about that. You haven't seen that anywhere in the mainstream media. But you heard from my show. That's partly why you listen. So here's another topic we've got to discuss here. And I don't mean to get off topic with this right now. But I've looked into the $18 to $22 trillion of these foreign investments that are supposed to be taking place inside the United States that President Trump has been elated about and happy about. I've been happy about this. I said, this is great. We're going to get some investments back in the United States. Hopefully the manufacturing will uptick and then everything will be much better for us. But here's the problem. I can't find any shred of evidence that a dollar from any type of these companies abroad have spent inside the United States yet. Again, which is off-putting. I would have to say at the least. All right, back to healthcare, though. So maybe that's a facade for right now, for 2026. Not a dime has been sent to the United States. Going back to the healthcare, though, they go on by saying parts of the healthcare industry have been increasingly relevant among immigrant workforce. No kidding. I knew this was coming too, by the way. I knew this was going to come out too and say this. So we've got a job that is highly structured for immigrant populations. Now, it continues saying that the United States has long offered special visas. Why is it a special visa? But we don't have any people that can work in the healthcare industry here in the United States? No, we need a special visa to bring in other people from abroad, cheaper labor, of course. Of course, it's always what they want, too. For highly skilled foreign doctors willing to move to rural America, where the need for medical care is great. I talked with you yesterday on the show, too, about the collapse of American education. That's a good segment to go back and listen to. And the ramifications of it, too, though. You destroy education. Instead of creating critical thinkers, you create activists. You create these mini Maos in the streets, okay? And that pull, of course, for the Democratic ticket always. And what do they do when they can't get jobs, these kids, these young adults? Well, they get on government assistance, right? That's the way it works. This is what we're producing in these public schools now, by and large. Of course, there's obviously exceptions. Certain parts of the country, certain people inside every school district go out and do great things. Make no mistake about it. But the general consensus is that we're not producing young Americans that are ready to go out and work that can take on these high-tech jobs, these high-skilled jobs, these jobs that are high-paying inside healthcare or transportation or whatever it might be. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be a service job for all I care. Could be a trade skill job. We need to start pushing people into these fields. Because, again, that's what we're looking at here. Now, the Wall Street Journal is also so void of reality, by the way, too, that they write, the rise of healthcare and construction jobs are in high demand because of the nation's massive data center building. And that presents a puzzle in the job market since President Trump has severely restricted immigration and ramped up deportations. Who is now filling these jobs? Well, could it possibly be Americans that have made up part of this 4.4% unemployment rate that want jobs again? Could it be them? Maybe. But, here's what we need to see. Here's what we need to see. We need to see growth in the manufacturing. Construction, that's great too. Finance, small businesses perhaps, not just big business. Not just the, obviously, limited to one industry in the country. That's really bad. Folks, that's really bad when you think about it. That one sector has just taken up the entirety of the overall economic growth in this country. That's not good. That's not good at all. I'd like to see this obviously spread out through each and every sector. That would be very good for America. That'd be good for Americans. Now, apparently, zero job cuts for January. That's what I looked up too yesterday. I said, okay, we've gained 130,000 jobs. How many job cuts were there? Well, there's nothing there for that. Now, I'm sure this will be revised a couple months from now, just like what we saw during the Biden era, of course. But before we move on, let me just tell you this one thing. The U.S. deficit is about to reach $1.85 trillion, 5.8% of GDP for this fiscal year that ends in September 30th in 2026. So we're adding onto the $38.5 trillion now, another $1.85 trillion. This is fiscal insanity, folks. How do we dig ourselves out of this one? We're literally going to be at $40 trillion by September this year, with no end in sight to stop this, to cut government spending. And what has Trump proposed moving forward? He wants $1.5 trillion in a new spending bill for national defense. Now, it might not sound like this to you, but it sounds like this to me. Now, that is a budget that is amped up to go to war. That's just the way I see it, folks. And if we go to war, obviously, I don't think the economy is going to be growing very much in that time frame. And of course, it'll lead to all sorts of supply chain issues, disasters worldwide, and obviously nothing positive. So we got rough times ahead, folks. Just so we're clear on this. That's why I pray every single day we're not going to get involved with what's taking place in Iran, but only time will tell with that as well. So that's just something we've got to take a look at. Now, I do want to say this to you, though. Before we go into my article on California, I do want to talk about this article in the Washington Times. Very good article. I like this article a lot because this is what we need to do. It's talking about the manufacturing inside the United States. It says Trump has reversed the Biden-made manufacturing decline. And the numbers that they're presenting to us is that in January, the ISM Manufacturing Index jumped 4.7 points to 52.6%. And they're saying that this estimate is obviously very good. When it jumps nearly 5 points in a single month, that means something fundamental has happened. Now, I can't find the backing for this. They don't mention any particular companies or jobs that are being created by this, but this is what they're suggesting is taking place. So maybe some companies have increased. They're saying the imports of capital goods and factory equipment has surged in 2025. Again, I haven't seen any of these investments taking place, though. Certainly nothing I can find. So they're touting this Trumpian economics as obviously the capital investments are accelerating in this sector. We need this. We should want this. Now they're saying that the factories don't materialize overnight, though. Well, no kidding. They take 12 to 18 months. So maybe Oftentimes up to 36 months. Okay. Okay, so we got several years to see this really take place, the actual jobs. If this is true, then they've heeded my warnings that yes, we need to go in, we need to start rebuilding our manufacturing again. This is what we need to see. But I'd like to see exactly where this is taking place, because we're not being told where this growth is taking place. And by the way, during this time period, the jobs that should be appearing are construction jobs. What did I just tell you, though? The construction jobs are a very small percentage of the overall growth we saw just recently. So if all this is taking place, if all this big jump in manufacturing is happening, and we're going back in, we're building up these buildings that are empty right now, and we're opening up for electricians, for steel workers, for concrete crews, for equipment installers, for new engineers, for anything in that category, you name it. These are good, middle class, often sometimes union jobs that are coming into effect here. So why aren't we seeing this reflecting, though? We lost 1.1 million jobs in 2025. We did not gain that many jobs back. And time and time again, we're being told that it's the healthcare jobs that are coming back in. Now, if they said, hey, we gained 130,000 jobs, they're in these different fields, steel workers, concrete, electricians, contractors, equipment installers, engineers, I'd say this is great. This is what we need. But we're not seeing this. But one last thing I'll say about this, and I'm going to keep my eye on this for you. Don't worry about it. I'm going to keep my eye on this, see where these manufacturing jobs are arriving, where they're going. Because again, this is what we need to build up our middle class. What it says here towards the end of the article, it says it took roughly 30 years of bad trade deals. Again, this is all by Billy Clinton. Good old Billy Clinton in the mid-1990s. NAFTA, China's entry into the World Trade Organization. Systemic foreign cheating. Obviously, the outsourcing of these jobs, right? Let's put these jobs in China instead of in Detroit. Well, what do they do? It hollows out, causes for decay in these cities, dilapidation of these buildings. The buildings are empty, no one pays on them, and then, of course, we have a banking bust that's right upon us. This might actually save, if this is true, by the way, if this continues to grow, this might save us from this building bust that is coming this year. That's what they're estimating. So I am very hopeful that this is correct. I hope that we can trust in President Trump that we're starting to grow this, we're starting to build this, and people are starting to obviously not default on these empty buildings. Because, again, I told you before, 20% of the buildings in downtown areas all across America are empty. At some point, someone is going to have to default on that. When that happens, when there's a default on that, the banks go bust as well. Now, if that happens, we're in for some real tough times ahead of us. And speaking of tough times ahead of us, folks, California has got some tough times ahead of us, folks. And I know because I once lived in California. And it's a beautiful state. So many great people there. So many great things to do there, too. So much to see. How do you screw up a state like California? How could the idiot Gavin Newsom destroy California? It's beyond me, but again, I never underestimate the Democrats for their stupidity. Here's what's happening in California. This is out of Fox Business. It says, California truly at a breaking point, state senator says, as refineries close and gas prices surge. Well, what did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen with Gavin Newsom's regulations, the red tape all around the energy sectors in California, the lack of drilling permits? Do you think these companies are just going to sit around and just stay there and hope that Gavin Newsom opens up the state again for them? Of course not. They're saying, hey, we'll go someplace else then. Plenty of other places to drill. And the idiot that Gavin Newsom is, Kern County in the Central Valley of California, it's like, rural too, but in this county, some of the richest oil reserves in the country are sitting. And he's not going to open up any more permits. Now, he's rescinded that lately, and he's come back and said, well, I'll open up some more drilling permits. But these companies have had it. They've had enough of the red tape. They've had enough of this so-called wealth tax. They've had it. They're sick of the regulations. They're sick of it. So what are they doing? They're saying, hey, we're closing. We're done. We'll go someplace else. And that's the result, again, of California Democratic policy. That's what you're seeing here. So the California fuel market is now entering another period of strain as another refinery capacity continues to shrink now in the nation's largest gasoline market. No kidding. The planned closure of the Valero's Benicia refinery, one of the state's remaining major facilities, is expected to tighten up in a system that already operates with little margin for disruption. Well, what's going to happen now? Well, if this refinery closes, and that's what you're going to see a lot of supply folks begin to get cut off from the California gasoline. Now, I've got a clip here from this guy's an assemblyman. He's very good, this guy. His name is David Tangipa, I believe is how you say his name. And he lays it all perfectly out for you. So I can't say it any better than he can, so let's take a listen.
Gas prices are about to go up here in California, and here's why. We just lost 12% of the gasoline refinery capacity for the state of California. The Benicia refinery has shut down early. It was originally supposed to shut down on April 1st, but because of the business climate here in the state of California, because of the rules and regulations it takes to operate, they shut down early. When you lose 12% of all gasoline refinery in the state of California, guess what happens? Gas is about to go up. We also lost a pipeline because now we don't have enough oil to push through those pipelines. So what do these producers now have to do? They have to truck their gasoline supply, their oil, and their crude supply to different areas. So be ready because your gas prices are about to go up. It takes about 12 to 21 days to really start feeling the effects, but you will really feel them when summer hits.
So there you go, folks. Again, this is all because of Gavin Newsom. It's all because of the Democrats in Sacramento. These bad policies are pushing these companies out of the state. California, by the way, requires certain types of blends of gasoline for climate change regulations or environmental regulations, all these things that are put on these facilities that allow them not to operate normally if they were in another state that had some sanity in it. Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. This northern refinery in Benicia has played a significant role in supplying gasoline to a state that consumes more fuel than any other state except Texas. Now, this closure is a wave of several other refineries, too. The Phillips 66 down in Wilmington, California, in Los Angeles County, is also scheduled to close. But we're seeing a steady reduction in California's ability to produce its own gasoline now. So what does that mean? Well, that means instead of getting it in California, you've got to get it refined, processed, and then brought in out of state now. That's going to cost more money. So now they're going to become increasingly dependent on other refineries elsewhere. They're also going to have to make different kinds of blends. So I'm sure that will cost more money for them too. That's going to be another problem. As you heard the assemblyman say, we're stopping even use of pipelines now because there's just nothing to put in them. So now what are these companies doing? Instead of doing that, they're putting them via road. So now what could have been a much cheaper process is now going to take even more money to bring this oil to market before it even gets refined. This is what we're seeing now. This is the great policies of what's taking place in Sacramento. And now they want to offer you a mileage tax, folks. Isn't that great? A mileage tax that's estimated to cost the average Californian driver $4,200 a year. They'll take from you, they'll continue to take from you in California. So now we have fewer refineries operating, even routine maintenance, and of course the unexpected outages that can obviously take place. Because now look we don't have the oil going to various different, what do I want to say? Not refineries. Oh, it'll come to me in a second. But this is going to affect people at the pump. This is going to be a very, very big problem. And as a result of this, you're going to see, obviously, people paying much, much more. He's estimated, by the way, you'll be paying $8 a gallon at some point for gasoline. This is absurd. What? You know, folks, when you look at the the gas in, let's say, Needles, California, which is right on the Arizona border. It's about $5.80 a gallon for unleaded. You go across the state line into Arizona, it's $2.80 a gallon. That's not supply and demand. That is all environmental policy. That's what you're seeing right now. This is why these things are happening. And if, again, less oil, you'll have higher prices because the supply is down. Obviously, the electric plants, right? They're going to have less supply going into them. Does that mean more brownouts and blackouts, which we already see in the state of California as well? This is all things you've got to think about if you're living in California, because all of this is going to affect every single Californian. And it's only going to get worse from here on out because they are not going to change ship on this. They're going to keep right on the same course. They care not that you're going to be paying more for gas. They're going to charge you more to drive. This is all a part of their plan. This is what they want. That's why people say, you know what, this is so expensive. I'm going to get a bus ticket. I'm going to go by bus. Or I'm going to sell my car and ride my bike to work. I mean, whatever they might do. Who can afford this? The average Californian can't afford this. On top of the already high existing cost of living there. So now you're straddled with this issue of, do I drive to work or do I, do I ride my bike to work? Or what do I do? Do I work closer? Do I stop taking trips? Do I stop doing all these other things I normally do? All these things are going to be a big factor. And by the way, too, the cost for registration for vehicles is up in California, too. Quite a bit, too, I'm told by some people. So this is out of control. I think it's long overdue. California at least gets a Republican governor, for God's sakes. But can some parts of the state actually wake up and see, you don't have to live like this? You shouldn't have to live like this. This is complete tyranny, is what you're seeing right now. And Gavin Newsom, of course, is right at the front of it. And somehow he wants to be president. Scary, folks. Very scary for what's happening in California. My deep wishes for you, folks, that things improve there. Because this is not good. And also, which is not good, is in the Associated Press here. It says, what to know about the Homeland Security shutdown starting this weekend? Well, of course, the Senate ended their session early this weekend. So it looks as though this will not get resolved. And now we're going to have another partial shutdown for just one part of the government. And that would, of course, be the funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That's set to expire this Saturday. Now, Democrats said that they will not help approve for more funding until new restrictions are placed on federal immigration operations after the fatal shootings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis last month. So let's break this down a little bit. The Democrats brought these proposals. I read through them to you. I think, by and large, they're not terrible. We should have more training. We should obviously hold people accountable. I have no issues with any of that. But I said that this should go further. If the state and local governments are not assisting ICE, and I'm not saying they have to go and obviously be involved in the operation, but if they're not going to control the people, the protesters, the rioters, from interacting with ICE, then that city, that state should be given zero federal government money. Absolutely 100%. Why would we continue to do this when they're not cooperating with us, when they're not cooperating with federal immigration law? Now, some of you will say, well, it's a federal issue, Gervais. They really have no say in that. That's right. They have no say in that. I'm not telling them they have to go door to door with them or be involved in the operation, but they need to control their populations. They refuse to do that outright. Jacob Frey did, Tim Walz did. And as a result of that, you saw these protesters beginning to impede these operations, which again is illegal, by the way, folks, just so we understand that. You have no right to get up into an ICE officer's face. You have no right to do that at all. That goes beyond protesting. And while it's very tragic that both of these individuals died, it all could have been prevented if the state or local government had been involved in this. And Jacob Frey defunded his police back in 2020 because, again, he kowtowed to the mobs. And as a result of that, you see a much smaller police presence inside Minneapolis. Well, since the local government has been cooperating with ICE to again, prevent the protesters from engaging with them. Have you seen any type of incidents? Of course not. Have you seen, by the way, in any other red states where these same operations are taking place? Have you seen it in Oklahoma with Governor Kevin Stitt? Not once. Have you seen any riots in Florida with Governor Ron DeSantis? Not one. Or how about Texas with Governor Greg Abbott? Have you seen any of these out-of-control protests that turned very violent? Not at all. Not at all. Now, we know they're not organic. We know they're all orchestrated by big money. But this is exactly what they wanted. They wanted to deflect because they don't want this type of enforcement. These are their voters. These are the people that they can hide behind, use for talking points. They don't care about these people. They don't care about the people in the street. They don't care about the illegal aliens in particular. But they know that they are a talking point, and there certainly votes for them. So they don't want to see this enforcement. So now it's a two-way streak. Now they can deflect away from the massive fraud that's taking place inside Minneapolis, particularly Minnesota. And then you also have the lack of enforcement of federal immigration law. So it's two wins for them. See how that works? And of course, everyone just eats it right up. The ICE thugs in the streets. Oh, okay, the ICE thugs in the streets. Well, what do you propose we do about the 45 to 50 million illegals in this country? Nothing? We might as well just say we don't have a border anymore. We might as well just absorb Mexico, Canada. Hell, why not? Let's make it all one thing. That's what the globalists want too, by the way. You dummies, you. That's exactly what they want. Now, while we might not see, obviously, a shutdown of the ICE process itself, obviously, there's still money to go around because of the funding from the big, beautiful bill. This would affect them probably much later on. But other parts of the DHS could be affected. For example, you might see the TSA be affected by this. Things like airport screenings could also suffer as a result of these shutdowns. How do you think that's going to go if you're flying, folks? Think you're going to make all your flights? You better get the airports about 5 hours early to make sure you can get through. Now, they say here they'll continue to scan passengers and their bags at commercial airports, but without pay until the funding lapse is resolved, raising the possibility that workers will be calling out or taking an unscheduled leave could obviously keep this whole system stressed. And even some of these areas, they're still trying to recover from the 43-day shutdown that took place. So we ask ourselves, why is this happening? Well, because the Democrats want this. The Democrats, first and foremost, want this. Chuck Schumer can use this. It aids and abets them. And when I say them, I mean just the politicians. They can say, look at us, we're so benevolent. We care for everybody in the world except for conservatives and American citizens. And of course, we need to keep getting elected. And of course, you dunces will continue to pull the lever for us. Fine. We'll shut down the government again. Don't worry about it. And if that means, of course, that we have no ICE enforcement, well, then these illegal aliens can continue to live in America. Continue to put a burden on the housing market, the healthcare market, you name it, education. I mean, all these things are affecting every single American to an extent. So this is why we're seeing this. I think Leader Thune should give them what they want, to an extent that if the ICE officers take off their masks, anybody that doxes an ICE officer will go to jail for 25 years. Any city, any state that refuses to cooperate with keeping protesters or rioters away from ICE loses all their funding from the federal government. Let's see how Chuck Schumer does with that. I'm fine with them taking off their masks. I want them to do everything constitutionally, with a warrant, with badges on them so they can identify themselves. Absolutely, 100%. I agree with the Democrats on that. But there needs to be something else, obviously, some concessions on their end too. So I'm happy if Thune just says, hey, I'll give you, we'll give you this. That'll be fine. But you're going to give us this as an advance too. And that's how it's going to work. And if both work, then what can Chuck Schumer say about that? What's his next move going to be? He's going to get everything he wants. But they aren't going to go that far. They want the sanctuary city policies. Because, again, that aids and abets them getting into office. It's more voters for them. And that's what this is all really about. This is why they opposed the federal immigration laws. So never forget that, folks. That's exactly what Chuck Schumer wants, and that's what the Democrats in general want. Let's talk Netanyahu, though. He was at the White House a few days ago. This is in Israel Today News. It says Netanyahu expresses skepticism on any deal with Iran. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister told President Trump that he believes that Iranians already understand who they are dealing with. Whatever that means, I have no idea. I don't believe the Iranians trust President Trump at all. I've told you what Iraqi has said, and of course their skepticism behind any deal that could take place. They obviously want concessions. They want freedom, though. And they're not going to just capitulate to any demand that President Trump makes. That's number one. So, one of the things that he said, though, was I think was fairly interesting, though. He said that the Prime Minister said that he had an excellent conversation with President Trump, emphasizing the close, genuine, and open relationship between the two leaders. According to Netanyahu, his discussions at the White House focused primarily on the current nuclear negotiations with the Islamic regime. So let's pause for a second. Let's pause. Israel, allegedly hit all these 3 sites. Isfahan, Fordow, I forgot the other one. And Trump said they're obliterated. We went and struck them afterwards. They said they're obliterated. So why are we going back to this nuclear deal? What are we talking about this for? You've destroyed any chance for any type of nuclear deal with them now. And even then, the Iranians have said openly, we'll talk about nuclear negotiations. We're not going to talk about ballistic missiles. We're not going to talk about uranium enrichment or any type of reduction in that. And Trump is still talking about this, though, as if he's got the upper hand on this. He doesn't. And we're certainly not in a position where we can do anything like regime change, which, again, is what Netanyahu actually wants with this. He wants to make sure that Israel's protected. That's what this whole meeting was about. So President Trump doesn't even want to deal with that. He wants President Trump to say, no, you can't have any type of nuclear technology. You can't have any uranium enrichment because, again, that threatens the state of Israel. This is what this is all about. It has nothing to do with national security in the United States or any type of threats coming from Iran to the United States. Quite the contrary. This has everything to do with Netanyahu. And really, I think Trump said it best because when he was talking, I'm going to play this for you in just a moment. When he talks about what is happening with the whole idea with the nuclear, and you'll hear him say this, he goes in and says, we went in there and caused all these problems. Well, yeah, the last time Netanyahu was at the White House in December of 2025, what took place right after that? We saw the destruction and the devaluing of the currency. Scott Bessent went and openly talked about it at the World Economic Forum. Now Trump is openly saying it to NBC. This was all a plan in advance for a false flag attack. They were hoping these riots would have continued. They were hoping that the Iranian government was going to arrest people, kill people, cause mass chaos. They listen, we've got to come in now. But if they don't come in, we're going to take them out. And that's exactly what Netanyahu wanted. Of course, Trump wanted the same exact thing. They don't want diplomacy with Iran of any kind. They don't. They just simply don't. Diplomacy has to work 2 ways. Trump cannot just come in and say, I demand you to do this, this, and this. And if you don't, we're going to bomb you. That's not diplomacy. Not just bullying another country around. And Iran has made it very clear, any attacks on the Iranian soil will meet a greater regional war. That's the way it's going to be. Let me just play you Trump one more time so we got to understand his position. And again, the lack of strategy too, by the way. I think that's what we need to understand too. A total lack of strategy. But then again, this is what he said to NBC News just recently.
The supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah. He should be. As you know, they're negotiating with us.
I know they are, but the protesters have said, you know, where are the Americans? You promised them we would have their back. Do we still have their back?
Well, we've had their back, and look, that country's a mess right now because of us. We went in.
Because of us. Not because of their own currency. Not because of their own economic woes. Or their oppressive government. It's because of us. So he said the quiet part out loud. It was because of us that the Iranian rial crashed. The economy was in the tank. People took to the streets. And then, of course, we hijacked that. That's exactly what you're hearing from President Trump right now. It was our fault. We did that. Not them. We did that. And we could sit here and say, well, we don't like the Iranian government. Okay, you don't like the Iranian government. Okay, fine. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying any government's great. But to say or suggest that this was a organic movement that took place and this is about protesters is completely fictitious. Absolutely 100%. Let's keep going.
We wiped out their nuclear. If we didn't take out that nuclear, we wouldn't have peace in the Middle East because the Arab countries could have never done that. They were very, very afraid of Iran.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of Iran anymore. Those beautiful B-2 bombers went in and they hit their target, every single bomb, and obliterated it.
Okay, so every single bomb obliterated. The nuclear sites, Isfahan, Fordow, Natanz. So why are we going back there? To bomb what? He's saying, well, they would have had it in about a month. First of all, there's no evidence for that. There's absolutely no evidence for any of this. But this is exactly what's taking place. This is the rhetoric being sold to the American people. And it's completely disingenuous, too, by the way. Netanyahu closed by saying, if an agreement is reached, it must include the elements that are important to us, again, meaning Israel, to the state of Israel, and in my view, to the entire international community as well. Not only the nuclear issue, but also the ballistic missiles and Iran's regional... So, again, he's saying you can't have any allies. Anyone that opposes Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, you name it, the Houthi rebels inside Yemen, can't have any of this. Can't have any of this at all. By the way, most Gulf Arab states are the ones that fund Hamas, too, by the way. Iran does bolster up Hezbollah, though, in Lebanon. But this is what Netanyahu wants. Any type of stoppage to what he wants to do, which is Greater Israel, anything that threatens that, he wants to be completely obliterated. That's what it comes down to. And just if you think I'm not being completely honest with you, let's take a look at this ZeroHedge article. And it says here that confirmed now, the United States covertly sent thousands of Starlink terminals into Iran amid unrest. So you'll remember I told you this took place. I told you that the government came in and they, by that I mean, of course, CIA, Mossad of Israel, MI6 of the UK, they came in and they worked with these different factions, for example. They worked with the Kurds, they worked with the Baluches, the, Mujahideen al-Khalqs, they were also working with them as well. And they got these groups to be the rioters, not the protesters, but hijack the protest itself into killing police officers, setting buildings and cars on fire, killing people, using guns. It was very, very destructive. But this was all done by these intelligence agencies. This was an intel operation inside of Iran. And Iran knows about this now. And they know that we were a part of this. So now they're going to be extremely skeptical with any type of deal from President Trump. They've got to be. But here it goes. It says the Trump administration has now confirmed what was already long suspected. And again, if you listen to my show, you would have known this already. The United States sent Iranian protesters thousands of Starlink terminals, and that was how they communicated with these groups after they shut off the internet, amid last month's raging economic protest and unrest. The mainstream media had claimed that the whole time that the demonstrators were purely peaceful and completely spontaneous, but the Wall Street Journal piece greatly muddies this MSM narrative. Absolutely it does. Here's what they did. They communicated through Starlink, again, SpaceX's Starlink. They communicated with these people. After these people were arrested, they got the phones, and what they found was the same exact message from the same exact Mossad female agent, telling them exactly what to do, where to go, what to hit, what to say. She was speaking in Farsi, but she was a Israeli Mossad agent. And by the way, this also contradicts earlier claims from weeks ago that this was merely an activist, nonprofit NGO groups that got a small amount of Starlink systems to protest. So Iran was able to work with Russia, who themselves were able to get into the Starlink system And they were actually able to subjugate it and shut it off. And once those communications ended, so did all these protests too, ironically. So again, Iran knows exactly what's happening. They understand this. Russia knows the exact same thing. So when they make deals with President Trump, they've got always in the back of their mind say, this might not work out so well. So President Trump has buried himself in a hole here. Who is going to trust him if he makes a deal with them? Trump's already said he doesn't need international law. Said he only needs his own morality. You'll all recall that meeting he had with the Washington, I think it was the Washington Post or New York Times. But that's what he told the reporters. He goes, I don't need international law. Well, I'm sorry, President Trump. International law is a part of our law as well. We signed into all those treaties, and any treaty is the law of the land. So a lot of these countries are very wary about any deals that President Trump makes, the things that take place now, the type of policies we have, especially on the high seas and what have you. All this in the back of their minds. Now, it says that President Trump was aware of the deliveries, officials said, but they did not know if he or someone else had directly approved the plan. Of course he did. Because he knew exactly what took place before. He met with Netanyahu. They're working with Mossad. It says here, the United States has denied any connection to the uprising. Of course we're a part of the uprising. Absolutely. Though the Starlink operation shows the Trump administration has done more to support the anti-regime efforts than previously known. Well, again, we are supporting the people that were causing the chaos in the streets. That'd be like saying George Soros had nothing to do and was unsure that the protesters, the Antifa thugs on the streets, got violent. And that's the same comparison here. Of course they know about it. We're absolutely behind it. The only problem was it didn't work out because they weren't expecting Iran to crack the space link. That's what it came down to. Or Starlink. And that's why everything fell on its head. That's why you're seeing that. All right, folks, let me see where we are today. We got about 2 minutes remaining. Let me go over this one article quickly. This is by, we'll close the show off with this one. This is out of Breitbart, who says, Josh Hawley calls for the indictment of Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison over alleged ties to Somali fraudsters. So this just goes back to what's taking place inside Minnesota. And this is very damning information, too, by the way. According to the report, Ellison accepted several $2,500 campaign donations from Somali fraudsters after they raised concerns that the federal investigators were unjustly looking at their financials. Well, what did Ellison do as a result of this? They came to him and said, you are familiar with this is Hawley. He said, you're familiar with the $9 billion in historic fraud in your state, including the $250 million in our Feeding Our Future program alone, to which Ellison said he's familiar with it. He said, because the people who ran the Feeding Our Future program came to your office at the state capitol, December 11th, 2021, and asked you to help them with getting investigators off their backs. They complained to you for upwards of an hour about state investigators going after them. They begged you to help them, and you agreed to it, amazingly. And we know you did, because it's all caught here right on tape. Why'd you help them? Now, Ellison, of course, denies this, to which Hawley said that Ellison had accepted $10,000 from them 9 days after this meeting. In other words, he was caught red-handed. So he helped the fraudsters defraud his own state, the state government, for $9 billion, and he got a campaign contribution out of it. In which case, he's in collusion with them, ripping off the state. He turned his back on something he knew that was happening. Now, as of late December, 85 people now have been charged with the Feeding Our Future fraud scandal, nearly all of whom are Somali descendants. And the investigation has led to some 60 convictions thus far. Well, folks, what's taking place in Minneapolis, again, this whole thing with the protest was in a direct result of what was going on there. It was look over here and don't look at us, because that's exactly what they didn't want you to see. They didn't want you to see the mass fraud being ripped off by the likes of Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and probably many others in the political arena as well. Folks, thanks again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Hope you learned something from the show. Make sure you're keeping your mind sharp, body strong, staying prepped with food, water, ammo, money, gold, anything you need to be self-sufficient. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Enjoy the weekend. I'll see you back here Monday for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.